as it relates to my book, Black Republicans, they were the original ones, not the ones of today, obviously. They really helped to create HBCUs. They were at the forefront of that. I mean, that's part of their legacy, part of their history. Rep. Adams, what confuses me is how and Lindsey Graham has spit out this lie, Senator Tim Scott has spit out this lie. How did they get a hold of the messaging that this was a Trump creation and not your work? I mean, what were you thinking when you heard this messaging shift and your name almost being erased? I mean, how did they it's just bizarre to me how they make up messaging and then erase the work of people who are doing good work. What were you thinking when it happened, and do you know how it happened?
Well, I think how it. I mean, I think that kind of thing always happens. People
Mm,
take credit for the work of other folks. I've been through almost 40 years in elected office. I served 20 in the North Carolina House. I served 11 years in local government and so forth. So you kind of have that, but you have to keep putting it back on the record. But let me just say, just to clarify for a moment, the bipartisan HBCU caucus is also bicameral. And so we do have, as a matter of fact, Senator Coons, Senator Tim Scott pair off in the Senate. In the House, I pair off. My co-chair is Representative French Hill of Arkansas, who has 5 HBCUs in his district. So, because they have been engaged in that way, I think that's kind of
mm,
how they, get to want to take credit. Clearly, they have been supportive of HBCUs. They should be. As I
right.
said before, many of them are in their districts, and so they have a lot to gain by supporting our schools, because our schools, as I said before, in terms of the economic impact that we have, the fact that we have so many doctors out there, the total employment impact of HBCUs is somewhere around 134,000 jobs. Lifetime earnings for our students who graduate make about $130 billion. So it's about the future, and the future really rests with the young people that we're trying to educate today.
Rep. Adams, God forbid, what impact would another Trump presidency have on HBCU resources and funding?
Well, I think they would dry up. I don't think that that the former president has any real interest. I think the interest right now, and you hear Republicans talk about it, has more to do with an election that's coming up and trying to bring African Americans to the table. But I will tell you that President Biden there's been a lot of funding coming into our schools. Okay, so I don't certainly want to deny that. One of the things that I still believe, and I had a bill that I worked on for a couple of years now, and hopefully we're going to reinvent it. And that was the Ignite bill, institutional grants for new infrastructure, technology, and education that would really provide some support for these schools who not only have been underfunded, but who have a backlog of deferred maintenance. I mean, billions of dollars. And so, if our schools, if we continue to get financial aid and all those kinds of things, scholarships, they're good. But they're not going to be enough help if our buildings are falling down.
Are you at all ever disappointed when, I'm not going to name any names, but any particular rappers come forward and spread some really disappointing, just flat out wrong information? Uh, what are your thoughts when you hear that?
Well, I'm concerned about anybody that spreads information that's incorrect, and we're hearing a lot of that as we go into the election season. And what's really damaging about that is young people listen to it. Uh,
Yeah.
they listen to it, they repeat it. Old folks are repeating it too. I mean, I've heard some folks on. I was listening to Roland Martin's show, and
Mm.
this gentleman got up there, and he was quoting the Future Act. He didn't know it, but he was quoting the bill word for word for word. We got an additional. I mentioned Ignite earlier. We got an additional $50 million in the budget that we passed, and hopefully we'll get more, the 50 million in infrastructure funding to our HBCUs and the minority serving institutions as well. So I just think that we all will have to do a better job of messaging, and we have to call people out who are
Yes.
messaging inappropriately. And I think we have to do it. That's why I'm so grateful for the comment that you made. And of course, everybody was texting me all over the place. I have a lot of
Oh.
friends who are retired now, right? And so they look at the View and all the other shows.
Mm,
I'm busy
wow.
here with all of the work that we have to do. But I think it is important, especially as we move into as we are into the election season, and we do need to appeal to the millennials, our younger voters, so that they understand what impact this election will have. Somebody's going to make a decision for and about you, most times without you. You got two things you can do. You can do what I've done and many of my colleagues, to run for office, work from the inside out, or you should be able to control those of us who make those decisions on your behalf. And
Right.
I told my students that every single day. I tell my community that every single day. And I think about John Lewis, the great John Lewis, who I had the pleasure of working with, who talked about the vote being so precious, and almost sacred, he said. And it clearly it is. And that's everything. There's so much on the ballot. I'm not talking about people. Democracy is on the ballot. Your education is on this ballot. Your health care is on this ballot. Your reproductive, your ability to make decisions about your own health, that's on this ballot. Everything is on this ballot, and we have to go out and not only believe that, but understand that those your freedom overall, that's what it's about. Your freedoms. Listen, when I think that my granddaughter, my youngest, just turned 18 years old last week, uh, who will have fewer freedoms than her mother had, and her grandmother had. Though that's a scary thing.
Last question before you go. Where Congress is right now, is this the worst that it's ever been in recent memory? I know the Newt Gingrich years were, I know you weren't in Congress then, but they were really terrible as well. I would love to get your perspective. There are people saying it's never been this bad. Is Congress, I mean, we got Mike Johnson, a slim majority over the House, but what the GOP right now is doing in the House, is it as dangerous as people are making it out to be, or has it just been this way for a very long time and it's just getting a bit more attention?
Well, I think it's getting more attention, but certainly in my almost 40 years in public service, and I've been following, even though I was not here during the Gingrich days, I followed that. But it is pretty bad. It used to be, when I first got here, for example, in 2014, members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, went out to dinner. I mean, we had civil discourse, civil conversations. You don't have that now. And that's unfortunate, because I think the people overall want us to work together. We should work together for the benefit. I represent almost 700,000 people. They're not all Democrats, but I represent all of them. And so we need to get back to putting people over politics. I mean, we've got to do that. But it's bad. It's bad when we listen. We almost shut government down 3 times just recently, almost 3 times. And it was the Democrats who had to save the day and keep government open, because the Republic, first of all, they can't govern. It's pretty obvious that they've not been able to do that. I mean, they can't even keep their own folks together. We had
Hmm.
to come in as Democrats to make sure that if you got a Social Security check, you were going to get it. If you're a veteran and you were getting a check or you needed support, that you were going to get it. If you had to go to work, transportation, you were going to be able to get there. And so it didn't used to be that way. It wasn't that way when I first came here 10 years ago. And it's pretty bad now that we are just not focusing. I can't even think of anything. This is probably the worst session that we've had. Nothing has, it's been the least productive in since I've been here. And so I know about as I say, the other days when other people were here, other Republicans, and I watched that. I was here when President Obama was here. And I mean, just the disrespect for the president, a member shouting out when he was doing an address to our collective body, "You're a liar." I mean, that kind of
Mm,
stuff. It's really shameful. Matter of fact, I've even seen the change in the attire. You know, it
mm.
used to, we're pretty strict about how you're supposed to look, but people are kind of doing their own thing. Not, I think Democrats, we're always well poised here. But I do think things are really bad. And so the public is not imagining that. And I believe, look at what happened in New York just last night.
That's right.
Okay,
That's
that
right.
tells you something
That
about
was a
how
blowout.
people are feeling and what the expectations are. Because it could have gone either way, but you saw the
Yeah.
way it went. And
Yeah.
that's because people are sick and tired of this.
Yeah.
And they're gonna listen, and it's going to pan out in November at the ballot box because there's so much at stake here. And I just couldn't imagine uh, giving those keys back to the former resident of the White House. I just can't. I mean, that is very frightening to think about, in my opinion.
I, it scares me, and I'm not being over dramatic about it. I'm a student of history. I wrote a book starting in Reconstruction and ending in the Trump era. I see a lot of similarities with the end of Reconstruction, but the difference of back then is that we had a different voting electorate. Now women can vote. Now there's more brown folks in the country. We don't have to have an 1877 fall. We don't have to have that this time around. I always think that in 1964, the country would not have survived a Barry Goldwater administration. And I really believe in 2024, I don't know if this country can survive a Trump administration. So I want us to show up and be engaged. And politics aren't perfect. I understand that. But you got to think of the long game. You've got to think of the long game. And there have been some great wins. And that's what hurts me, Rep. Adams, is that for some people on the quote unquote left, we don't know how to celebrate our wins. We'll turn a win into a loss. I'm like, wait a minute, this is a good thing. How on the other side, they will turn a loss into a win. They will just lie. I mean, oh yeah. So close it out for us, Rep. Adams. I really
Well, I
appreciate your
just
time.
think we need to get on the right page.
Yes.
And we need to turn the page and we need to read. I'm an educator and I tell folks all the time, there's some magic in that print out there, but you have to read it and you also have to do your research.
Yeah.
So you don't have to believe everything that you hear. You need to verify what you hear to make sure that it's substantive, that it's accurate. But then as it relates to you and your families, you need to make sure always that whoever you're supporting, whoever you're talking to is in concert with your beliefs. And that's just so important. I tell people, don't wait until after someone gets into office. Talk to them beforehand. Do some research and find out exactly what they stand for. Know what your standards are and understand that whoever represents you should represent you first. They should not represent themselves. So I think and then I just want to say in terms of our schools, we are going to continue to work hard to make sure that HBCUs continue to not only survive, but that they thrive. I mean, that is so very important when we look at the contributions that our schools, that our educators, that those who spend time working on these campuses to really get our young people to a point where they can really be an asset and not a liability. That is just so very important. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, young man. I am just I'm excited to read your book.
Thank you.
And maybe we can have a conversation one day about that. But thank you so much for not only believing in what we do, but supporting what we do. And listen, our HBCUs are going to be better because of people like you who continue to help put the word out, the correct word
Yes.
out. And I appreciate that. That meant so much to me to first of all to get a shout out on the view. That's pretty cool right there. So thank you so much. And listen, if there's anything that I can do to assist you in your work, please just reach out and let me know.
I truly appreciate you. It was an honor to correct the record, and I'm happy I was able to shout you out. It's really important that we just operate in facts. I think if we operate in facts, we can win. We have to operate
Absolutely.
in facts.